ET contactees claim some extraterrestrials are concerned about Earth, our planet, that is, the future of our race and life on our Earth, and the threat of conflict and human action, such as World War III. This is by Steve McCamley on Collective Spark from Collective Evolution. We're living in a time in which the collective mind is opening and has opened itself to the possibility that we are being visited and have been visited. This is what Lord Admiral Hill Norton says, by beings from other worlds. And this is nothing new. We have archaeological artifacts of some things that look like UFOs, extraterrestrials, humanoids, and humans, human-looking people with astronaut suits. So how did these things come about? We even have the Abydos temple frieze from ancient Egypt showing things like submarines, helicopters, jet engines, jet airplanes, supersonic airplanes, things like this. How did they know that these were around at that time? Now, we also have the ancient texts from ancient Greece telling us of flying ships, for example, the Argo of the Argonauts. So what is going on here? This topic is no longer taboo. The Department of Defense on June 1st will be coming out with some kind of a UFO disclosure, according to John Ratcliffe. So it's not taboo. It's not to be ridiculed anymore. Let's see in a few months what they'll come up with. Now, especially since the fact that the existence of unidentified flying objects, UFOs, or unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, has been confirmed multiple times by many governments and agencies around the world. The latest example being U.S. Navy and Pentagon Tic Tac Nimitz UFO off the West Coast. Kindly support my Patreon account since YouTube has again demonetized my YouTube channel. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below. We've also we've seen legitimate coverage on the topic from mainstream media, organizations like New York Times and CNN, coverage that hints to the idea that these objects do not originate on Earth or from our civilization. There are those archaeologists, anthropologists that say they could be remnants of the ancient Atlanteans that are still hiding somewhere in various locations on our Earth. Anyway, this type of mainstream disclosure has many people skeptical, given the fact that so many people are having a hard time trusting these networks. For years, we've seen a campaign within the mainstream to ridicule these topics as conspiracy theories. Therefore, it's indeed an important question to ask ourselves why they are legitimizing the topic all of a sudden after so many years of secrecy and ridicule. Now, what happened? One of many interesting recent supposed contact experiences that may currently be ongoing comes from a forest reserve in central Thailand, a hilltop called Khao Kala. There had been attracting there many people, especially those who have been having interests in UFO phenomena due to reports of UFO seen in that area, hovering above a large Buddha statue that sits atop the hill. It's all happening approximately 3 hours by road or rail north from Bangkok in Nakhon Sawan, which translates to the city of heaven. Those who gather there and have been gathering claim that these objects are piloted by extraterrestrials and that they receive telepathic messages that are quite similar to the messages and teaching that come from Buddhism. To someone who has not studied the lore of extraterrestrial phenomenon, this may seem funny and ridiculous, but supposed telepathic communication with extraterrestrial beings is quite commonplace among those who claim to have had such experiences. In many cases, the teachings and messages supposedly received also seem to corroborate to many other encounters from around the globe. The corroboration among experiencers is actually quite eye-opening and vast. There are thousands of experiences that corroborate with each other in several fascinating ways. We know that even the Native Americans claimed that the Anu, the people that were white-skinned and had bearded faces. We know that the Native Americans never have beards, So these Anu, their friends from the sky, star people they call them, gave them laws how to live and how to have peace and love and harmony between each other. Now, so this is not only, and basically this is has occurred in most places around the world have legends like this. Now, another common corroboration seems to be the idea that we as a human race are on the brink of destroying our planet, especially with nuclear energy, nuclear and atomic energy. And in doing so, we may also affect beings that live in other worlds around us. These particular beings in Thailand have warned of environmental disaster and the threat of World War III, as well as if humanity does not get its affairs in order, we're not going towards a good pathway. Some of these beings in Thailand apparently come from Pluto. They arrive in spaceships via a supposed wormhole above the statue, and the beings and craft are seen spontaneously appearing and disappearing. They are supposedly thin beings with silver-looking skin. Pluto aliens worry about something so devastating happening to Earth, such as war or in the environment, and that it might impact their planet. They also want to give some people the ability to communicate with them, so if humans destroy everything in a nuclear war, the aliens will be able to help survivors rebuild human civilizations, they say. This is interesting. Dr. George King, who founded the Atheria Society, according to him, receiving telepathic messages from an extraterrestrial. The messages given through Dr. King from the 1950s onward corroborate with UFO activity disclosure today in 2021. And the messages that come from these people in Thailand, and you can read about that story in the link here. What I find intriguing about Mr. King's transmissions is the fact that the information he was relaying to the public in the 1950s correlates with a lot of information we know about now, about the phenomenon today in 2021. For example, he stated that they were highly concerned about humans' use, testing, and manufacturing of nuclear weapons. Fast forward today, we have a lot of information about the phenomenon which suggests this. For example, a declassified report by Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center from June 1959 shows just how seriously the United States government wanted to detonate a nuclear weapon on the moon for scientific measurements and such. According to Colonel Ross Dietrichson, who had a long stint with the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission, they did try this. While with the Air Force and the Atomic Energy Commission, he learned about incidents involving nuclear weapons. He said among these incidents were a couple of nuclear weapons sent into space that were destroyed by the extraterrestrials. At the very end of the 70s and early 80s, we attempted to put a nuclear weapon on the moon and explode it for scientific measurements and other things, which was not acceptable to the extraterrestrials. They destroyed the weapon before it got to the moon, and that is their major concern, to preserve the integrity of the Earth, because it also affects their own system. The idea of an explosion in space by any Earth government was not acceptable to the extraterrestrials and has been demonstrated over and over, Dietrichson said. Now, of course, we know that's not, so now that means it's not just the Earth that's in peril, it's our solar system that's in peril. Okay, the natural and beautiful revolutions of our planets in our solar system. Can you imagine? Now, it's now a matter of public record. UFOs have been seen many times, hovering over nuclear missile storage facilities. We just had a senator a couple of days ago saying that he's very concerned about the national security aspects of what is going on with these extraterrestrials. I forget the name of the video, but anyway, here it's Marco Rubio was warning about these UFOs, and we even had these little UFO drones over Colorado and areas of nuclear installations and bases in the United States. But this has not only happened in the United States, it's happened in the UK and elsewhere. Now, for example, Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana is one of the best examples. An event occurred there in March of 1967 at a base that was responsible for maintaining a large amount of nuclear weapons. It was a nuclear weapons launch facility We're talking about people who are responsible for guarding the launch of these weapons that have the capability to completely destroy our planet and all life on it. Military witnesses and others saw a red glowing UFO hovering just outside the front gate. And after that happened, all of the nuclear missiles shut down and went completely dead. And there's a link here with a clip of Captain Robert Salas, one of the men involved in the incident, giving his testimony. And it's amazing to think that Dr. King was talking about their concerns with our nuclear weapons in the 1950s, isn't it? Now, Dr. King claimed that these beings were concerned about humanity and the direction we're heading to. There are examples to choose from. The same types of messages were given telepathically to more than 60 children at a school in Zimbabwe, Rhodesia at that time. Harvard psychiatrist John Mack investigated the case, and all the children who were very young at the time, in 1994, drew the pictures of the beings. They were elementary school children, receiving the same messages and recounting the exact same experience. Of course, the children were very frightened by these extraterrestrial beings. The messages also seem to be a warning of where our planet is heading if we do not change our ways, and were beamed into the children telepathically from the beings seen by them. And this was covered about 6 years ago, and the story having a meaning to update the article links. It's not hard to find it if you do research on YouTube. Now, here's something, an example of corroboration from 1977, news broadcast that was supposedly taken over by an extraterrestrial. There are countless examples. Former Canadian Defense Minister Paul Hellyer has been speaking about these UFOs and ETs for decades, that they're among us as well. Some of us, he says, could be walking around us, along on the sidewalk on the street, and they look totally human. Now, he says, decades ago, visitors from other planets warned us about where we were heading and offered to help, but instead we, at least some of us, interpreted their visits as a threat and decided to shoot first and ask questions later. Now, the gatherings in Thailand at this area have become quite popular, so much so to the point that in 2019, government officials disbanded multiple groups atop the hill and petitioned in court to ban mass gatherings in that area. In September 2019, many UFO enthusiasts who gathered in the area were confronted by police and forestry officials. Now, as for the origins of the hill's supposed attractiveness to extraterrestrials, believers say it all began in 1997 when retired Sergeant Major Churd Chum Sam Nao, deep in Buddhist meditation at home, received mental messages from what he insisted were aliens. He told his family, and they scoffed. Wasawa says, "I asked my father to tell the aliens to show themselves." Wasawa, his daughter, said, and the next day the aliens sent energy to spin my brother and brother-in-law. She says the two men were yanked up from the living room sofa and spun spontaneously like whirling dervishes out of the house into the yard. That, to me, looks very demonic. That really looks demonic. Anyway, Wasana, who quit her job as a nurse to champion the extraterrestrial, says her father continued to receive telepathic messages over the years. She said, before my father died in 2000, he taught us how to communicate with the aliens. And she said, today, she says more than 100 other Thai people have this ability after practicing with her. Now, the Bangkok Post also describes this specific story. As a medical professional and science lover, 56-year-old Somjit Rakpeth does not just believe in things that cannot be proved by fact. Mrs. Somjit was born and raised in Nakhon Sawan, where she worked as a nurse at the local hospital. After a long shift one day in late 1997, Mrs. Somjit received a phone call from her father, Chev Sa Muan, a retired army sergeant living in Uthai Thani province. Do aliens exist? He asked her bluntly. Based on her own experience and lack of any evidence to the contrary, she told him no. Sergeant Cherd was a monk before he joined the army. He loved to meditate and did so every day. Several weeks later, he called his daughter again. He said he could hear an alien in his mind while he was meditating. It said there would be a big disaster that would kill half the world's population. Sergeant Church said, "They are real. I won't believe it until I see it with my own eyes," she replied. Mrs. Somjit asked her father to send the alien over to her house in Nakhon Sawan, repeating that she would believe him when she saw it firsthand. Not long after, the nurse received a phone call from her father while she was working her night shift at the hospital. Her father said before hanging up, "They are on their way to see you now." And less than 5 minutes later, Mrs. Somjit got a worried phone call from her sister-in-law. Quote, "He is spinning out. Please come home," end quote, her sister said, referring to Mrs. Somjit's husband. Charoen Rai Peth. Mrs. Somjit was confused, but she could not leave her shift until the morning. And when she finally arrived home, Mr. Charoen explained everything. He said he had lost control of his body and began spinning like a top. He spun out to the front yard of the house and was shocked by what was in the sky. He said, "I saw a big round flying object with a bright orange light in the center and many other smaller lights spinning around it." This is what Mr. Charoen told Spectrum. Mrs. Somji called her father back and told him to inform the aliens that she was at home waiting for them, and around 8 p.m., when most houses in the neighborhood had already turned out their lights, she got the call. He said, "They are on their way again." Mrs. Somjit and her two other sisters went outside to stand in front of the house, and there it was up in the sky. The sisters looked at each other in the face and said, "It's real." Having lived in Kala for 47 years, not much surprise the 67-year-old Pawun Chunsri Nuan. She lives at the foot of the hill 145, which is part of the Kala mountain range, and named after its height above sea level. The place is a hot spot for sightings of unexplained lights in the sky. Mrs. Prayung had her first encounter with the paranormal long before Mrs. Somjit. The incident took place one evening when everyone in her family was out at a local funeral. She was home with her nephew that night, sitting on her front porch at 9 p.m. A large object with a light, quote, "as bright as a moon," end quote, came flying out of nowhere and hovered down close to her. She didn't know what it was, so she called her nephew to come and see. She said it was quiet, so it couldn't have been a plane, and it was covered by blinking lights, she said. Then it flew away very fast. I thought I was dreaming, she said. The takeaway. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The UFO extraterrestrial topic leaves no aspect of humanity untouched, be it history, technology, science, metaphysics, spirituality, and more. It's truly a consciousness-expanding realization and a paradigm-shifting moment for humanity if we do indeed ever get to experience it. One thing seems to be becoming more clear every single year is that we are not alone, never have been alone, and we are and have been visited for a very long time, and that's at least what some people say. Now, at the end of the day, we have a lot of issues on our planet to resolve. This should be our main focus. So this was from Collective Evolution. Contactees claim some extraterrestrials are concerned about Earth and the threat of annihilating ourselves with our technology not being used right, of course. This is published here under Creative Commons on Collective Spark. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support.